You must have heard.
So this is a big deal, particularly
Microsoft announced it's buying GitHub.
Going to buy coding site GitHub.
Satya Nadella just bought GitHub for $7.5 billion.
About one of the biggest acquisitions in the history of tech startups, which is Microsoft's acquisition of GitHub for $7.5 billion in stocks. Now let's understand how GitHub started in the first place. In 2005, Git was released by Linus Torvalds, which was a tool to collaborate on a software project. Git made this possible by allowing the projects to be forked, helping coders to implement their respective features or resolve bugs and finally merge their changes to the master branch of the project. Torvalds himself didn't expect that this tool would be widely used beyond the Linux kernel effort for which it was created. According to an article on ZDNet, he said, "Right now, the pain of using it due to the rough edges is just higher than the gain, unless you have rather specific needs that the kernel development process has." Meanwhile, Phillips and Chris, while working for the tech website CNET, felt the need to contribute to Ruby on Rails, which was the main development framework that they were using at CNET. Now slowly people started talking about Git at the Ruby meetups, about how awesome it was. But at the same time, working in a distributed way with private repositories has security concerns. One Ruby programmer, Tom Preston, was different when it came to seriously understanding this problem. On a Thursday night, October 18, 2007, he was sitting alone in the booth at Zeke's Sports Bar and Grill in San Francisco while sipping his drinks. That's when Chris walked in and Tom started discussing his project Git, which allowed him to access Git repositories in an object-oriented manner via Ruby code. And that sparked some curiosity in Chris. And seeing this, Tom shared his idea of building a website that acted as a hub for coders to share the Git repositories, with the name as GitHub. And that's how GitHub was born. And that is the importance of building side projects. So as a first step, you need to identify a burning problem that exists in your company or in your university or in your friend circle. Once you have identified the problem, you start solving that problem step by step. And you learn whatever is required in order to solve that problem. Once you have a respectable solution, you start sharing with your friend circle or maybe with your colleagues and get some feedback. And it's perfectly possible that some of your friends or colleagues would be really excited to help you out in building that solution. And that's when you will realize that in the process of solving the problem, you have learned a lot. Things that you wouldn't have been able to learn if you would have just watched videos online. As mentioned by Tom in his blog, the next night, Friday, October 19, 2007, at 10:24 p.m., Chris made the first commit to the GitHub repository and sealed in digital stone the beginning of our joint venture. In mid-January, after 3 months of nights and weekends, they launched into private beta mode, sending invites to their friends. And in mid-Feb, Phillips joined in and publicly launched the site on April 10, 2008. It was created to be like a Facebook, but for programmers, with features like code browser, developer's profile, projects, and developer newsfeed. The response was amazing, and after a month, GitHub was officially founded after changing its name from Logical Awesome. In June 2008, Reddit joined, and in July 2008, Yahoo joined GitHub to start working on various open source projects. By 2009, Twitter and Facebook joined GitHub, and by the same year, it had 100,000 users with 90,000 repositories being hosted. By July 2010, GitHub was hosting 1 million repositories. GitHub was seeing rapid growth, not just in terms of users and repositories, but also profit. As mentioned in the TechCrunch article from 2010, Scott, the then VP of Research and Development at GitHub, said the company is still funding free and very profitable, and they are seeing incredible growth for GitHub and Git usage in general. And he was definitely correct. Next year, they hit 2 million repositories. And finally, in 2012, Google joined GitHub. The rise of GitHub was noticed among investors, and finally in July 2012, A16Z announced that it is investing $100 million. This was the first time GitHub received investment from someone outside. Clearly, GitHub had become the de facto social network for programmers. In fact, it was becoming a place where programmers find work, not just a place where they store their code. In an interview with Chris, when asked about how hiring managers should think about the differences between GitHub on one hand and sites like LinkedIn and Odesk and the various job hunting sites, Chris said, like a portfolio of resume, GitHub works best for evaluating candidates. In October 2011, GitLab was launched, which was an open source alternative to GitHub, and it gave an option for the enterprise customers to host their repositories on their own private servers, which was definitely a great feature, something that every enterprise would love. In the very next month, in November, GitHub launched GitHub Enterprise, which gave them an option to host all the repositories behind a corporate firewall. So you can see how competitive you need to be when you're running a business which builds products for enterprises. GitHub's journey wasn't all about achievements, but also failures. In September 2012, GitHub went down for around 2 hours during the migration of a schema of MySQL. Next month, in October, GitHub went down again for around 90 minutes, but this time it was because of a DDoS attack. So what is DDoS? DDoS stands for Distributed Denial of Service attack. It's an attack to disrupt the normal traffic of a server or a service by overwhelming the target or its surrounding infrastructure with a flood of internet traffic. And this is carried out by a network of devices which are infected by some malware, which gives the control to a remote attacker. And these individual devices will then act as a bot which can execute instructions from the attacker. In December 2012, it again went down for a couple of hours. Once again, it was during the maintenance window. But the team was resilient and they finally hit the 3 million users in January 2013. But some of these 3 million users were overly enthusiastic about open source contribution, and they contributed their passwords and private keys unknowingly to the GitHub, which was discovered from the GitHub search tool. And in order to protect these users, it had to finally disable the GitHub search tool for some amount of time. And some users, or you can say online criminals, started a determined, constant spamming of the website by publishing ransomware. So on one side, GitHub was facing all kinds of challenges while operating its services. On the other hand, there were new competitors which were entering the market. Bitbucket and GitLab were already giving a good competition to GitHub, and in June 2013, Perforce launched another competing product called as Swarm, a collaboration platform for continuous integration and delivery. GitHub was looking for adding a lot of new features, and one of them was adding the two-factor authentication for all of its users. And in the same year, it hit 4 million users. The year 2014 was quite challenging. It all started with a case against the leadership. A software engineer on Twitter wrote that she was continuously being harassed by the leadership and one of the engineers for 2 years continuously, and that was a big deal. So as a response, GitHub started an independent investigation. And what was the result? Null pointer exception, which means nothing came out of the investigation. But 1 week later, Chris wrote a follow-up letter on the official blog of GitHub, saying that they did find something in the investigation, but anyhow founder did resign and quit the company. The next challenge for GitHub was being blocked in India, and 31 more websites were blocked by the government for having content related to anti-India propaganda. But later on, the block was lifted. But GitHub was still moving faster and further. And in June 2015, it opened another office in Japan, which was the first office outside of US. And in July 2015, it raised another $250 million of investment as a Series B round. In 2016, GitHub launched new tools like Atom Editor and Electron.js, which helps programmers to build desktop applications using web technologies like HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. It also launched a new tool called as Distributed Git. It hosts a large number of Git repositories across multiple machines. That is pretty cool. What we can learn from here is when you face tough situation, you become creative, and also you develop a solution-oriented mindset. But when you live an easy life, then you become lazy, complaining, blaming-oriented person. Now let's get back to the story. GitHub had gone through multiple ups and downs and was still growing, with employee count doubling in just 1 year from 300 to 600. Earlier, Microsoft had launched its own code sharing platform called as Codeplex, which it decided to close down, asking users to move to GitHub. And now you can guess the reason what was going on behind the scenes. In August 2017, the CEO of GitHub, Chris, decided to step down and said, "What we have accomplished over the past 10 years at GitHub has been mind-blowing, and I can't wait to see what we can accomplish over the next decade." Indeed, something might have been cooking up behind the scenes, and the very next year we found ourselves. What was the reason? Which was Microsoft announced an agreement to acquire GitHub, and Nadella, the Microsoft CEO, shared the motivation behind acquiring in this video.
Think about what's happening in the broader world. Every business is a software business, it's a digital business. Whether it's precision medicine or precision agriculture, personalized education or personalized banking, is being built by developers.
Just like Microsoft invested in the future by acquiring GitHub, similarly, you need to invest in your future, in your career, by building a product, a high quality product that is going to teach you far more things than a typical course would teach you ever. It will teach you patience, perseverance, focus, consistency. These are the things, these are the character traits that is what is going to make you different. That's what is going to make you unique. So start building today.